live, and then
Sure. Yeah.
pop over into that. We'll get all set up. Okay. So we are live, and I am just trying to tag you real quickly here, Nicole.
Sure. I'm just going to check your
Which
page.
is,
Oh, I can see. Yeah.
okay, we're live. Yeah, we're
Hello,
streaming from
everyone.
Zoom.
And were you able to tag me as well?
It's coming right now.
Hi, everyone. Hello.
Wonderful. Yeah, okay. And we have some friends tuning in already.
Okay.
So I think we
Okay.
are, yeah, we're live and we're set on both of our feeds. So good to be here with you. Hi, Nicole.
Hello, Sarah.
You and your beautiful magenta and your beautiful lighting. So good to be with you.
Um, thank you
Dazzling.
much. Thank you for having me on. It's an honor and a pleasure to serve. So thank you for having me here. Yes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought maybe first we could just introduce ourselves because I know this is going out to both of our audiences. So would you like to go first?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Hello, hello. I'm Nicole, and I'm excited about creating with the potential of evolutionary consciousness on the planet. And really, that is what I am called here to do, to help anchor this in. I do this through systems and or tools like Throne Work, the Throne Work program, the Calling the King program, and many different programs like the King Temple programs. I also help women and assist them with their businesses as well to help them really bring in brilliant, iconic consciousness and incredible ways to create, right? So that they're receiving their high divine compensation. And of course, I've been talking about this is a year of wealth for women. And a part of that is also the year of truth for women, the year that women are claiming our truth and standing powerfully in that. Yes.
Yeah. And wealth is so much a part of our truth.
Wealth is so much a part of our truth. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Well, thank you. Wonderful. My name is Sarah Poet, and I work with women who are on a path of moving from identification with trauma, healing that masculine, feminine wounding, and coming into the unified truth of who they are and standing in that sovereignty. So I met Nicole in 2020 when you first launched Calling in the King, and I was doing some really deep work on integrating the masculine back in me, and you are the code carrier on those things. And so it's been wonderful to just watch your evolution over the past year and a half, I guess, since I have been acquainted with you. And yeah, and then our paths converged a little bit more. And so it's fun to co-create with you. And it's just amazing to see all you've created. So as I talk about sacred truth and women standing in sacred truth, Nicole Gayle stands in her sacred truth, that stands in the truth of who she is. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about what that means to you. And then you've been on my podcast. I always ask for a little storytelling, like, well, how did you come to this point? Being a woman who would stand so embodied in the sacred truth of who you are.
Yeah. And of course, that podcast was just amazing. I loved serving your audience on that podcast as well. Just
The
absolutely.
very popular episode still. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So my evolution with my truth was, I would say, I always had access to a code of truth within myself that I actually did not fully embody until I was experiencing one of the most devastating things in my life, and that was the passing of my father in 2018. And I think before that, I was actually trying to negotiate with my truth. And I think a lot of women go through a process where they negotiate with their truth and or they compromise their truth and or they stifle their truth and or they muzzle their truth, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. right? And or they deny their truth. And so for myself, I think that by and large, there were aspects of myself that was denying my truth, muzzling my truth, compromising my truth, stifling my truth. Because a lot of times people see me now, it's just like, they're like, she's like fire. You know? But I had to learn how to actually harness that fire, how to harness that truth within myself and hold all of it within me without needing approval and without needing validation, without needing likes, without needing a pat on the back. And I had to go through an alchemical process in order for that to happen.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I went through this, more toying with my truth before 2018. And now I was going to face my truth in a way that I'd never faced it before. And I faced my truth when my dad passed, and I had to decide, what are you going to be, Nicole? Right? Are you going to live a lie? Are you going to keep denying aspects of yourself? Are you going to keep making excuses for why you can't succeed? Are you going to keep yourself small and you're going to keep going around this circle and this eeny, meeny, miny, mo, little girl consciousness that is chasing shadows all over the place? What are you going to be? What will you be from now on? Right?
Yeah.
So I was faced with that what will you be question, and I had to make a decision. I think for most women, there is an experience that offers them that moment in time where they need to decide whether or not they're going to stand in all of who they are.
Yeah.
And so 2018 was my time to really face the aspects of myself that was either going to keep running away from my truth, and or I was going to stand in my holy power and the strength of who I am and own the fuck out of it. You see what I mean?
I do.
So I made a decision, and I remember that decision was kind of like a conversation that I was having in my head that kind of sounded like this: Nicole, everything that you have known from before up until this point, just burn it all down. Burn it the
Mm.
fuck down. Just be done with it.
Mm.
It hasn't allowed for you to succeed in a certain way. It hasn't allowed for you to stand in your power in a certain way. It hasn't allowed for you to actually be erected in a certain way. It hasn't served you to the level that you need to be served. And so I had to make a decision. I had to decide whether or not I was going to keep toying around and spinning around in systems and ideas and programming and conditioning that wasn't serving me, that was actually making me just go on more of a descending timeline
Right.
and keeping me in this absolute complete madness around money,
Mhm.
right? Because a lot of me holding the power and the government of my truth and accessing that was now me now coming back in a good relationship with money.
Mhm.
And so if women run away from their truth, when of course money's going to run away from you, right?
Yes.
So I had to make that decision. And when I began to make that decision, I had to come to a place that everything else up to this point hasn't served me. And I haven't actually been living my full truth up to this point, and I need to burn it all down. And I remember hearing, burn it all down. As a matter of fact, I burnt a lot of things down. I actually
Mm.
rebuilt my business from scratch. I deleted, I started to like delete, 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 delete. I deleted so many things.
Clear it.
I cleared it. I
Yeah.
leveled it. I deleted groups that I was, I admin of. I deleted, my website. I deleted
Mm.
my email list. I'm like, gone, bye, whatever.
Wow. And you had
Yeah,
been in it for a while. I
I
mean, you
had been
built
in
it.
it. Yeah, I
Mhm.
had been in it for like a good maybe 7 or 8 years before, right?
Wow.
And 7 and 8 years of that was not my holy truth, was not my sacred truth, and I was not fully standing in the potency of that. And I heard the direction to burn it all down, and I followed that directive because I could not build. And I think what I was trying to do before was I was trying to build things on a foundation that was not my holy truth. That was not the sacred, holy, powerful aspect of my consciousness. You see, so of course there's no foundations. to stand on when you're trying to build like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a decision that I was going to now move from the place of living from that false reality, that false self or that lie. And I was now going to anchor in the truth. And here is a big thing too, that in terms of me making that decision. If nobody went with me, I didn't give a fuck. If you weren't going to go with me because I'm now standing in the government of my being, if you are not going to support me because I'm now standing in the government of who I am, if
Mm-hmm.
you're deciding that you're not going to buy from me because I'm now standing in the government of who I am, if
Which
you're
will happen. It will happen that people, can't handle it. That will happen.
it will happen. And
Mhm.
at that point, I didn't care. I just didn't. I was too busy trying to house the truth within my belly.
Yeah. And you had decided, I mean, I heard you say the word decide a
Yeah.
few times, like, and that is so important. I talk all the time about from like moving from the alignment of trauma, oh, woe is me, oh, this has happened to me, into, no, I'm going to align to my truth. And so you're saying your father had just passed. And I've heard you talk about this before, that was very
Mhm.
devastating. That was very painful. That was, I mean, that was a trauma in that you were probably pretty collapsed at that point in time.
I was very collapsed in that.
Yeah.
I actually faced a lot of the unresolved aspects of myself
Yeah.
from that experience. And so, of course, you also teach on going from trauma to truth. And I had to allow for myself to face those aspects to actually now come into owning my truth and moving myself from that place, that trauma based response,
Right.
that consciousness, that of course it's natural to, and of course I went through a very big grieving process, and it's always a grieving process. There's many layers of myself even to this day, because it's only been since 2018.
Mhm.
And so there was something though that I needed to decide within my own consciousness. And there is more than decision though. I
Mhm.
had to decide and then I had to invest. And I think for a lot of people, they're like, well, yes, 2021, I'm going to XYZ. But then you need to actually invest in your truth.
Yeah.
So then the question is, what are you doing to invest in your truth?
Right. Right.
Okay. Because until there is a certain level of investment in that truth, in that decision,
Yeah.
it's just what? Words, right?
And it won't happen. I mean, it's empty. It's like, oh, I want that. I want to live my soul journey. I want to know the, divine potency of who I can be. But then, yeah, it's the taking the action and um, yeah, going after it, the going after it. So you can be, I think there's a lot of confusion about this. And I was actually hearing from a woman today, this feeling of like, why aren't I there yet? And I love what you just said about you were aching, you were still grieving, and though you had decided to align to the truth of who you are. And so that was your guidance. I'm
Yes.
not going to stay collapsed.
I'm not going to say collapsed. And so there's a decision, but then there's the next step, there's an investment, and there's another step that comes after that.
Mm,
So decision, investment, pursuit. So then I began to pursue my truth. I began to be in pursuit of it. I began to be in sacred devotion to it.
mhm.
It's not just deciding, it's not just investing, there must be another level. So the alchemical process began really happening within me when I was in pursuit of my truth, when I was in sacred devotion to it, when I gave my all to it, when I was in that place where I was hungering and thirsting for it and running after it,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm.
deciding that this truth and the power of who I am must be expressed in my life. It
Right,
has to be.
right. Right. Yeah, because you had spent enough time looking at what was happening if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
You knew what that story was like. I
I,
would love Mhm.
I, oh, keep going.
I would love to hear you talk more about the feminine in collapse, because I know that such a huge part of your sacred truth is to bring in this divine masculine, to bring in the essence of God. And I imagine that there was a great turning in that too around the time of your father's death, and you're evaluating this relationship with the masculine. I'm speculating, and then you're realizing
Yeah.
that aspect of your sacred truth, and bringing that on board. I would love to hear you talk about that so that we can be in service with this conversation to the women listening around the orientation of collapse versus the orientation of erecting oneself to the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when I was faced with collapse, I needed an architectural energy. And I see and see that you're also speaking quite a bit about the architectural energy, the system that is now going to structure you in a way that allows for you to actually rise from that collapse.
Mhm.
So I needed something within myself that was going to come down into the collapse with me.
Mm.
Because I think a lot of times people don't see that. They think, I believe, most people think that they rise from the collapse. And I want to kind of share another way to look at it. It
Mhm.
was that that thing came down in the collapse with me, you see? And and that thing, that structural system met me in the collapse.
Mm.
So a lot of times, maybe the women are thinking, how do I ever rise from the collapse? How do I actually rise from this place? How do I actually now hold myself in this place of the collapse? And they're not realizing that. Oh, keep
Well, I
going.
was just, and then it's like this perpetual feat of the nervous system, like I have to do it. I have to do it.
Yeah,
Do it. Right.
yeah,
We're replacing that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it says, yeah, that perpetual cycle, and sort of that looping energy that they might face in how they are, when they're experiencing the collapse. And so, the way that I want for women to understand it is that a system came down in the collapse and began to re-engineer my consciousness, really, you
Mhm.
see. So, because I think a lot of women, they are thinking they have to rise all by themselves, right? I have to rise all by myself. I have to do it all by myself. Um, you can invite a system to come into the collapse to bring you. And essentially, what happened for me was that system began to erect my consciousness
Yes.
from the collapse.
Yes. Beautiful. And you would call that the masculine, or
Yes.
is it okay?
Yeah,
Hmm.
so the masculine structural, energetic body, like a force of energy that is about moving, grounding, anchoring in what needs to be moved, grounded, and anchored in, so that it then allows for my feminine to feel safe enough to even rise from that place. I think also too, it depends on where a woman is systematically and where she is with collapse. But I think a lot of times, because I remember I've been in different collapses, and
Hmm.
I've been in different collapses without that architecture within myself, you see?
Hmm.
And and what I was trying to do, I was trying to rise from those types of collapses without a system that was coming down within that was re-engineering my being. And I think a lot of times what goes on for women is that they are actually trying to move out of the collapse by themselves with their own nervous system that's frazzled. Let's just put it
Yeah.
like that, is as an example. You
Hmm.
see?
Hmm.
And
I've
and
got
and
to do it all my own.
yeah, got
All
to do it on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah, the independent woman programming kicks
Exactly.
in. Yeah, the
We're
independent
not
woman.
supposed to need anyone. We're
Not supposed to need anyone.
not supposed to need a
Yeah,
man,
keep
or
saying
anything.
it.
Sorry, not supposed to need a man or anything masculine, right? Like by that point, a lot of women have actually rejected the divine potency and the divine structure of the sacred masculine, and
Yeah,
then that's like this, we've been kind of sold this bill of goods that that's supposed to be independent and strong, and that we're supposed to be able to come up and out of anything from that place, but that is just not true because it's further collapsing the feminine principle.
yes,
Do you agree?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and also to going back to what I was saying is that for a lot of women in the collapse, they actually don't feel safe enough to come out of the collapse. And oftentimes they might loop inside of the collapse. And then, of course, the collapse becomes their identity. You see,
Right.
it becomes who they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then that's when we have this cultural phenomenon of this like perpetual cycle of self-improvement in women. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to self-improve forever. Right. And then, she needs to wake up to, oh my gosh, I've been trying to find who I am through trying to find my worth through self-improvement. And
Yeah.
that's kind of,
Yeah.
that's a cultural, again, the things we've been sold, right? Like if you self-improve enough, then you might be worthy, or then you might find who you are. But going back to what you started with, that decision point, the no, I'm going to decide to find my truth. I'm going to decide not to be a broken woman, even though these
Yeah.
things have happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm, beautiful. I'm looking to see if we have any comments. Um,
Yeah.
Sarah's saying she resonates because there was a death portal in her family that um, led to her finding more of her deeper truths as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do just want to say too that I mean, this is something that is never done. I mean, we're on the planet to keep evolving, to keep growing the consciousness, to keep finding the new truths. And so, women who are, I don't know, like on that, like I haven't gotten there yet. It's just like, oh, sister, align to truth and join the ride. Like, it's like, um, I recently went through the end of a relationship and I needed to move out and in a new apartment now. And like 2 years ago, when I was going through the twin flame crash landing thing that led to like the dark night of the soul,
Mhm.
um, that was a collapse as a result of, you know, the thing going on. This time, there's the relationship ending and there's no collapse because there's that architecture that's erected. And so I
Yeah.
just wanted to like name that as a real life example for women. Like we're still growing, still learning about relationship,
Mhm.
and yet this is it's like a hiccup compared to 2 years ago when it was like I didn't have that architecture. I didn't
Yeah.
have that, and that's why that happened, so that I could get the architecture. And then this is, even further opportunity for that fortification. But it's like you align and you keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
you do. And you actually deepen the anchoring of your truth over time as well. So I wanted to share with the women too that although I decided I was going to now be in pursuit of my truth, and then it became integrated within my system and the way that I was now creating. And I'm talking about like that integration that felt like I was holding the rod of God in my being,
Yeah.
like that kind of integration, not like some pretty little fancy thing, but you wake up feeling like you're holding the scepter of God in your hands. And it is a part of your internal system. It actually restructures who you are deep within yourself.
Mhm.
So yeah, completely. And so that Christic architecture and or that king consciousness, it then allows for that your entire body to be coded with that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was a beginning place, but of course I was going to continue to anchor more of that in. So
Yeah.
I want for the women to know that the claiming of the sacred truth and the integration of that is an ever evolving process. As you can see, how you kind of were at a place where you felt a lot of collapse before, and then 2 years later, I think you're saying
Mm.
you had an experience that didn't collapse you and just absolutely devastate you on a certain level that you had before.
Right.
So, of course, what happened and also has happened for many women in terms of when more of the truth is anchored in your system and it's anchored in your being, and you're now allowing for more of this to be a part of the way you create with, you're ever evolving into more of this. And
Mm.
so you're presented with different experiences and different things where you're going to see and feel whether or not the rod of your truth is holding you up, type thing, because it is really the truth that holds you up, really.
Mhm.
um, and so I remember when I was in those collapsed places, it's because I did not have that within myself. And of course, I wasn't held, or I didn't feel like I was held. Right. And the more I got that within my system and the more I began to integrate those aspects of myself, the more of myself was held within how I was creating. And it's exponential and it's ever evolving. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that's just, that's been for you in the last 2 years. It's incredible. It's incredible to see.
Yeah,
Living
it's
example.
absolutely stunning. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm so very grateful.
Yeah. Wonderful. So I would love to touch on the collective, you know, chaos that's going on right now. And just in that, I want to mention it and then talk about aligning to truth while this is going on, because there's a lot, you started talking about consciousness as we started here.
Yeah,
There's a lot that's at war for our consciousness right now. There's a lot that's trying to get our attention right now. And so I would love to hear you speak about this and the choice point of aligning to truth, even though there's this massive collective thing going on. And it's pretty important that we do this at this point in time, specifically while there is all this mind game going on. So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that is going on, definitely. And I would say that by and large, humanity has been hybridized. Let me just put it like that: hybridized and colonized in a frequency that is not organic in terms of its higher ascension codes and timelines and consciousness. So, what we have right now that we see presented is a battle, more like a spiritual war,
Mhm.
right? It's presented in a certain way in the world, but it's more like a spiritual war. And of course, people can feel the war on their consciousness, and all of the mental, emotional, and psychological tricks that this thing plays out on them on a daily basis. So
Mhm.
I think what humanity is aching for and humanity is wanting more of is the actual truth
Mhm.
of who God is within them, you see, within us.
And it comes through each person.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
answer is not out there.
yeah,
You mentioned validation earlier. This is one thing I really hear from women when we start working together and when they enter the mastermind. It's like all the different places that they're looking for validation from outside of themselves. And then we pull it in and pull it in and pull it in. So I just wanted to really say, like, you're saying that the truth that everyone is craving is inside of them. This is
yeah,
so important.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So there's the high truth,
Yeah.
and then there is the actual low frequency net that is perpetuated through different systems. And for example, like the mainstream media, right? So there is an aspect of consciousness of humanity that's been programmed to operate in a very false frequency that is not connected to high truth. And so really the war is against the truth.
Right.
The war is against the truth. And the war is about um, you not actually claiming and owning your truth. Because if you know who you are and if you know the truth, it's going to set you free.
Right.
You're then going to now live in your sovereign royal codes and your sovereign power. You're no longer going to be a slave. So the war is that this system, there's a system that wants to keep humanity captivated, seduced, and caught up in a certain sort of game and or certain synthetic reality, right? A false system, false reality that system is saying is actually emitting the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does, that it's actually I should say it's like a demonic system
Mm-hmm.
that is trying to now let itself seem and appear as though it's true, but it's actually false.
Right.
And I think in a very deep way, those that are really ready to wake up, they're recognizing that there's something about this that is not the high truth, that is not the actual pure truth and or the present truth.
Right.
And there's something about this that is at war to keep me from knowing the truth, right? To keep me hidden in darkness and to keep me actually sedated, unconscious, activated, and triggered consistently.
Absolutely.
See? So essentially, what's going on is that there is a demand for humanity to ascend into truth, right? And the more humanity begins to live in the truth and humanity begins to come back and return to that which is within, right? Then, of course, we're going to see a huge difference between two different realities. Because the reality that is the false reality will never stand in the face of you knowing the truth of who you are. It just can't.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a false consciousness. It's inorganic.
It's a false
It's a
consciousness.
lie. Yeah.
It's a construct, and it's a synthetic reality that is like a net and or a frequency net over the minds of people, where they are actually bombarded on a regular basis because that thing needs to ensure that you don't know the truth. Right?
And that you don't know who you are and that you don't come into your power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the moment you do, you don't need it anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah. So it's so complex, and then it becomes so obvious. So obvious.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what's going on, which is really, really great, is that more and more people are awakening to the truth of who they are.
This is the time.
Right?
Yeah.
This is the time. This is the time. They're actually saying yes to holding more of who that pure organic consciousness of who I am within myself.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to decide that I am on the side of truth.
Yeah.
And I'm no longer going to be allowing myself to be a slave to the false reality that is a construct that actually feeds out, that actually feeds from me, right?
Yeah.
Because any system that is inorganic is going to feed off of the consciousness of people. And this is what this system, people can see it, it's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
There is a system in the world that feeds off of the consciousness of humans. It feeds off of the violence and the riots and the protesting and all of the chaos and all the destruction. It keeps feeding off of that, and it keeps trying to actually sustain and keep that going. So the moment humanity recognize that, that system that you are engaging or what you are actually now experiencing is an actual synthetic reality that is not the truth, and then now come into the ascended truth. Ooh, I've never said that before. The ascended truth.
Yeah. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I've never said that before. The ascended truth. Okay, that's a new code. I'm going to just allow for that to now be just anchored in, right? The ascended truth. Yes.
Mhm, mhm. And I wanna bring this home for women who, might be, like, in a workplace or in families or with these trauma stories and going, "Well, how does this apply to me?" And it's that very, I say siphoning of the life force of women that when we started this conversation and we're talking about truth or trauma or truth, what are you going to choose? This is that depleted feeling that doesn't go away, that collapsed feeling, that what do I have to do to be worthy of who I am? That bullshit is this consciousness like trap that you're just describing. And so that's the power of aligning to the truth of who you are and saying, no more. You can't feed off of my life force energy anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So women might want to understand sort of what it looks like. So here are some examples.
Mhm,
So I'm not pretty enough.
mhm,
I'm not skinny enough, right? I'm not successful enough. I'm not enough. It's
mhm.
always that I am not enough of something.
I'm not healed enough.
I'm not healed enough. I
Mm,
don't have enough,
yeah.
right? I don't have XYZ because I'm not enough.
Yeah.
I've been told to believe that the reason why I don't have XYZ is because I'm not enough.
Yes, and another one that really got me is the answer or the resources or something that I definitely need in order to be enough is going to come from outside of me. So
Yeah,
I better behave, I better be small, I better not piss that person off, right? Because if I get too big, then I'm going to lose something that I need.
yeah.
That was a big mind trap for
You're so correct. If I get too truthful,
yeah,
right, people might not love me,
right,
right? If I
right.
get too truthful, then people might not necessarily invite me to XYZ. If I get too truthful, I might lose something.
I lose something.
Yeah. So it's
Mhm.
that fear of loss and or abandonment and or rejection that keeps many women trapped
Yeah,
in that constant loop and or that cycle that is about them disconnected from their truth.
yes, yes. And this brings me to, I think, the last question that I have, or the last topic for us, is
Mm.
this myth that if you choose the truth of who you are, that is selfish, that is a self-serving
Oh,
path.
yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
where the opposite is actually true. So I would love for you to walk us through that.
So not serving the truth is selfish, actually.
Hmm.
Not serving the fullness of who we are.
Hmm.
Um, not owning all we are, that not claiming all we are is us denying aspects of ourselves, right?
Yes.
So when women are taught that if they claim XYZ, if they are going to be too much over here, that they are going to be selfish, then they are taught a lie, and that keeps them in the dark, and that keeps them actually now muzzled, concentrated, in their own, in a delusion, right? Concentrated in a delusion, in consciousness that doesn't actually serve them from the potency of how they can actually create with their holy power, with their sovereign energy, with rising in the aspects of their higher consciousness, with claiming and having dominion and standing in their royal potency in terms of how they're going to be creating and moving in their lives. So this association with my identification that makes me selfish, we need more of that from women.
Mm.
Right? I'm going to have the identification of who I am, and if that means that I'm selfish, tough shit. Right? Right? So I
Which
think,
is a service path. Sorry to interrupt. It's a service path to do that. You're serving. You're in devotion to something higher. You're in devotion to yourself, but also the union that you came to be.
yeah, yeah, because it's systematic in terms of women's consciousness, and even at the cellular and DNA level, that we have been suppressed and we have been repressed in how we are with regards to our true identities, right? So a lot of times too, and I know that you support women with that, women might need even nervous system work
Yeah.
to make the leap from that pain of them that experiences the blame and or the
Mhm.
guilt of being selfish,
Mhm.
and then moving into those higher aspects of who they are as their holy power, and standing in their sovereign codes and in their sovereign truth.
Mhm.
Because sometimes what happens is that there is that such a fractured consciousness and that trauma that is still kind of coded within a woman's body, that when she actually want to rise into more of her truth,
Oh yeah.
she faces this war even at the biological level within herself, right?
Mhm.
That creates even a huge system of sabotage in
Mhm.
her own consciousness. So she might, for example, I've seen this happen quite a bit with women. They step out a little bit and they start to, for example, be very visible with their businesses. And then the moment someone attacks them and at the moment someone says something negative, it absolutely crushes them and pummels them into the
Mhm.
ground. And they will be literally so collapsed in that because
Mhm.
their bodies
Yeah.
can't really hold the truth and all of them standing in it. And I
Right.
know that you're like you're the person to go to for that. You're
Yeah.
the woman. If you want that kind of support, everyone, go to Sarah. She's a woman for that.
Thank you. Yes, I
Yeah.
lived it. I lived it. I mean, I was
Yeah.
the school principal who had to give the big talks on graduation day, who was laying on the floor beforehand, who was like gripping the podium because my nervous system was so fried that I couldn't be in that embodiment of the truth. And I had written the love letters to the graduates. I wanted to stand up there and like say it to the babies, but I was so afraid to stand in that truth because of everything that had happened. I get it. I know it. And so that's why we address physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, etheric. We're working on the architecture, which is all four levels of the being. But yeah, for sure, we need to fortify the body and the nervous system, to stand in that truth. And sometimes, Nicole, when I'm doing these sessions and we're in the architecture, it's like it's all happening, women. Like this time on the planet is so fucking potent that
Mhm,
like if
mhm.
you're going to decide to stand in the truth of who you are, it's going to happen. It's
Yeah.
already happening.
Yeah.
And then like our mind has to catch up to like, oh, the story's different now. Now I don't have to think that way anymore. Now I don't have to behave as though I'm traumatized anymore. And
Yeah.
sometimes our
Yeah.
mind is the last thing to catch up because really like we've been doing the work, it's like set. So I love how you phrased that to be living in the truth of who you are just is the service path. And to deny the truth of who you are is the selfish path.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Because
we've
it's
had
it's
it
it's, it's
backwards.
exactly. I was going to say it's an inverted program.
Yes.
And it's really something that is deep in the consciousness of many women, right?
Yes.
I mean, even us as mothers, we've
Hmm.
had to face that, right?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
like if you XYZ, then you feel the guilt of not actually XYZ for your children, and you feel tossed and torn that you have
Yeah.
to choose, right?
Yeah. I'm sure you had some of that programming come up when you chose your entrepreneurial path, when you chose, like, I'm going to go out here and I don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks. And if it succeeds, it succeeds. Yeah, there's that like old programming about, well, am I supposed to be doing this as a mother? Am I supposed to just stay in the day job, while my children grow? So yeah, I definitely have experienced that
You've experienced that. Yeah.
of
For me,
questioning.
yeah, my experience wasn't necessarily like staying in a job or not. It was
Mm,
more me needing to not seek anyone's permission and being okay with that. And then me also feeling like, um, I hope that what I'm doing is actually going to serve my kids in a higher way. And then, of course, I was trying to prevent myself from the guilt,
Yes.
just in case what I was doing wasn't going to be supporting in a higher way, right? So there was that I struggled with in a lot of ways in terms of how I was experiencing that. And there are times where my system was like, well, okay, I've been at this, doing this for a little bit, and I actually need to then take some space, and I need to actually create in this, you know, in this other space for my children and all that. So there's that kind of going back and forth with that. Um, but as I grew, I came into deeper ownership of my truth, and then kind of realized, look, I don't have to pick one or the other. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
just needed to own the space. And I know from that ownership, and how it's happened for me is as I owned more of it, the provision was there. You see, like, so the
Mhm.
provision was there. So I didn't feel like I had to like pull myself over into multiple different places, because now more and more of the provision was there. And it's not to say that perhaps a woman might go through a process where she does feel pulled all over the place,
Mhm.
because everyone's experience might be different. But the important thing is that we have a matriarchal duty as women,
Mhm.
to live out for our children as well, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And to break the generational curse and cycles of women in denial of who they are.
Right.
Yeah, we have to say enough,
Yeah.
and we have to be able to own all of it now.
Right. And
See,
not put that on our children to
and
do
not
that for us.
exactly, and not put that on our children to do that for us. And then
Right.
whatever it is that we need to process, whether it's guilt and or self-blame and all that,
Mhm.
well, get the support from people like Sarah to process yourself through it, so that nothing is going to be an excuse for
Mhm.
actually being in that full, potent, divine, feminine, right? Alignment,
Yeah.
right? Of who you are. Yeah.
So beautiful. Oh my gosh. Nicole, we've never riffed on sacred truth together before. Thank you for being here and doing this. This is such a
Yeah.
great conversation. And
You're so
um,
welcome.
yes, I'm gonna get me one of those lights that you have because I'm going dim here in the sunset. So inspired. Um, so that has happened for me during this call, for sure. Thank you for everyone watching. We had some watching the whole way through. So beautiful. I'm so glad that we could serve with the conversation. It's always good to be with you, Nicole.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you so much for having me. Just honored to serve. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And always a joy to be of greater and greater and greater service in
Yes,
everything that
yes,
I
that's
do.
our
Yeah.
work. Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
that's your work. That's our work. That's why we stand in the truth of who we are, to be a service to the planet at this time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
very
Women.
exciting. Mhm.
Yeah. Women, the world is waiting for your truth. It
Yeah,
really is. And there is no way, obviously, that we could facilitate this space without us saying yes and owning and claiming that and getting the support that is
yes,
necessary and needed to be able to hold more and more and more of that in how we're creating. So now is the time, 2021 is the time to
yes.
own all of that. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And you've got a program called the Diamond Life coming through in 2021.
Yes, yes. Currently, right now, the
Okay.
Diamond Life Group Coaching Program, it's just phenomenal. We have been working through the Diamond Sun Body today and the Inner Crystals. I know. And I was just streaming through these higher codes of consciousness, as we are now anchoring in the new frequency of the feminine as the glory of God. that is being expressed on this planet. So this idea too of truth is glory, and they're both unified together.
Yeah.
So we're excited about what's unfolding for that, and I'm so excited to see what's going to happen for women in your mastermind as well.
Yes, it sounds
Um,
like we're doing some similar work because this is the time for this work to be coming through on the planet. So we're working with the architecture. We're coming into the diamond heart frequencies and the Mother, Father, God, the Christos Sophia. Yeah, there's just so much activation that is
wow.
available right
Yeah.
now. So yeah, I mean, this isn't the time for. This is kind of another. I don't mean to open up another tangent, but or I could go on a tangent about this. Like the notion of women's work historically, like we're not doing that kind of work anymore. We're doing work where we're unified with the masculine and the feminine and masculine together, and women remembering that together and remembering the devotional templates, which I had to remember and you had to remember.
Yeah.
But we're really doing, I mean, this is so much a part of the service on the planet for re-templatizing. Is that a word? Did I just make up that
Yeah.
word?
Yeah. Yeah. We have tried.
Re-templatizing the architecture of the planet with the feminine and the masculine, and as women we're bringing in both, like we can hold and encode both. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that too, that it's not just women's work that we're doing,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Because I
really.
know that, yeah, your mission is to be able to have the unified masculine and the feminine, right? Or perhaps you can explain it and or share a little bit about that. Um,
Yeah, well, part of my sacred remembering and remembering my truth was like, I know that I work for the Christos Sophia. I know that that's why I'm on the planet. I didn't really know what that meant. And so, as I started to learn more about the architecture and the Christic architecture, and that was coming together, it was really about bringing the feminine back online with the masculine. This is how,
mhm.
like, throughout my life, this is my path of like, I wanted the sacred, but the way God had been presented to me was very tyrant, very patriarchal. My system could not be in devotion to that kind of masculine.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I had to go through the remembrance myself of like, well, what does this feminine frequency feel like? What does this masculine frequency feel like? And then really, I came to know Mother, Father, God, and of course still do. And so it's that. The erecting of the truth to me is the erecting of the remembrance of those sacred frequencies of feminine and masculine, both in the highest form and potential. And so when those are running through us, we're unstoppable.
Yeah. 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 Amazing, amazing, amazing journey that you've been on as well, and your
Yeah.
potent space that you're now creating for women, and this beautiful, gorgeous mastermind that you're bringing through and holding as a
Yeah.
beautiful container.
Thank you. Yes, the Sacred Truth Mastermind is available now and it'll be on sale for about 10 more days. And so people can check that out through sarahpoet.com and finding me on Facebook via this live. So thank you, Nicole. So wonderful to speak with you about important things.
You're so very welcome. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
To
Much
everyone.
appreciation to you as well.
Yes, I would love to know if there's something that really pops as people are watching or in retrospect, please pop a comment and we'd love to see what resonates.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye, Sarah.
Bye, Nicole. Thank you.